Hey there, fellow travelers, Mark here with Wolters World, and today we're in Paris, and today we're going to talk about different ways that tourists actually upset the locals when they're here, okay? And I just want to talk about traditional things that tourists do that they might not realize they're doing that upsets the locals, because one of the things you hear about Paris is how unfriendly the locals are, how stuck up they are. They're not. Honestly, Paris has some of the best big city people out there. That's why we come back time and time again, because the people are wonderful, from the service people to the bartenders to the people you meet on the metro. We've loved them every time, but there are things that kind of annoy them when tourists come. And I think the first thing I want to talk about is if you're in a tour group, and I know a lot of people come here in a tour group, but if your tour group kind of blocks the sidewalk or takes up the entire sidewalk so no one can get through and they got to walk in the street to go around. Look, tour guides here are infamous for not controlling their tour groups, so make sure if you're going to be in a tour, stand to the side, let the locals go by, because they have to get to work too, all right? So that can be a little upsetting for them. And that kind of goes into another thing that might upset some of the locals, is if you're walking down one of the streets, you see a beautiful picture, believe me, you will see a ton of them, but you stop right in the middle of the sidewalk. And they're going to work. You're like, whoa, hey, be careful there. Just make sure you're going to take your pictures, stand off to the side, just like you would in New York or Chicago or Tokyo. You don't take your pictures in the middle of the sidewalk, you move to this side, okay? That's one thing that sometimes gets the locals a little upset. And when you're planning out that big Instagram photo shoot kind of stuff, don't be stopping the locals from going through, because they got to get to work, okay? Because that's another thing I've seen a few people be like, hey, yo, we got to go through here. Can you finish up your Instagram model stuff? So that's another thing. Now, another thing that might upset the locals when you're here, or probably your waiters and wait staff when you're here, is when tourists get really upset about French service and Parisian service, and why isn't it quicker? Why aren't we getting our bill? Why aren't we getting our menu? They're not bringing my stuff because I'm from this country or that country. No. What you have to realize is here in Paris and all over France, service takes some time. It's going to be a bit before you get seated. It's going to be a bit before you get your menu. It's going to be a bit before they take your order. It's going to be a bit before you get your food. Once you realize that, they're not targeting you. That's everybody. But that's where I see tourists really get upset, especially some of the big tourist areas where they'll be like, what's going on? I want to get out. I wanted to pay. What's going on? And they'll like get up all huffy and puffy and walk out. And the locals are like, dude, I'm one waiter serving 20 tables. I'm like, I'm doing the best I can. And that's where there can be a little bit of roughness between a local and a tourist when they are here. Another thing, when tourists drive here in Paris, look, driving in Paris is not something I would ever recommend to anyone that is not from here, because all the weaving, all this kind of stuff, and you're not really sure where you're supposed to go. Listen, you're going to get some, not necessarily road rage, but a little bijou on the horn or something like that will be coming your way. So that's one thing that I've seen. The locals can tell that's a tourist going through. You might want to watch out for that. And one of the things that upsets them is the tourists that just walk out into the street. Now, I talked about that with the picture stuff, but I think one thing is the locals getting upset with the tourists that decide that they're going to walk to the Arc de Triomphe. Now, you can walk to the Arc de Triomphe, but then you take the stairs underneath and then come up. But there's always a few fools every day that think they're going to walk across the largest traffic circle like in the world to get to the Arc de Triomphe. No, don't do that. The locals will be like, what are you doing? So do pay attention with that one. Now, another thing that you might not even realize you don't do that might actually upset people is when you go into a store and you don't say bonjour. Look, if you go into a store or a restaurant or a bar and you come in, I guarantee the owner or the proprietor is going to tell you bonjour, and you need to say bonjour back. Or when you come in, you say bonjour, because that's just the friendly way that people do things. So if you don't say that bonjour, or if they say it to you and you say nothing back, that's not a way to make a friend here. And going along with that, I think another thing where tourists sometimes get off on the wrong foot is they start straight into English, or they start straight into German, or they start straight into Spanish. Look, even if you don't speak French, which I'm going to guess most people don't speak French these days, even you can just say pardon, excusez-moi, which is pardon, excuse me. You know, the stuff you heard in like, you know, Bugs Bunny, you know, these kind of French words, it's going to be more helpful. If you can just say, pardon, je ne parle français, I don't speak French, you're like, oh, it's okay. And they'll switch over, but don't just start right in. And don't get mad at them if they don't speak English very well. And definitely don't just start speaking louder, because that's also another thing that annoys the locals, is when tourists go around and they get really loud, whether it's on public transportation or at the cafes, the restaurants. No, French, you go out to a restaurant to enjoy being together with your friends, yes, but to enjoy the atmosphere, not to hear about somebody's table talk 3 tables over. So you do want to be careful with that. Also, when tourists get really, really schnockered, like drunk and stuff, that sometimes the locals are like, okay, we enjoy our wine, we don't get like hammered with it, okay? though it is so wonderful. You're like, how are they not drunk all the time? But just to let you know. Another thing that I don't know if it will annoy the locals so much as it will disappoint them is if you don't kind of experiment with the cuisine here in France. Okay, because Paris has got great Parisian food, yes, but there's great food from all over France here, great wines from all over France, and there's just so much great cuisine here that if they see tourists that aren't going beyond the steak frites and the croque monsieur, they're like, hey, you should try this, you should try that, and tourists are like, I don't know what that is, I don't know what that sauce is. Ooh, snails, I don't know if I could eat that. Like, kind of turning your nose up to French cuisine, that is a big insult here, and that won't go over well, because even if you don't like it, you should at least try it, because I bet you will actually end up liking it, because the food here is amazing, okay? And I think that idea that the locals are kind of sad that you didn't try the local cuisine kind of goes into this other thing that might upset the locals, and that is, if you buy into the stereotype that all people in Paris are stuck-up snobs, yes, we are from Paris, we are better than everyone else, look, that's not the case. Just like you go anywhere, like New York City, people think, oh, New Yorkers are all gruff and stuff. No, New Yorkers are some of the coolest people you ever meet. LA, you think, oh, LA, I don't want to go to LA. You go there, like, that's actually a fun place to be. Parisians are wonderful people, and we've made so many friends over the years coming here, whether it's at our hotels or the bars, restaurants, stores we go to. There's places we go back to every year. They know our names, it's just one of those things. And it's really sad because the locals get this kind of bad rap when they shouldn't have it. And so it's kind of upsetting to them that people think that we're all stuck-up snobs when we're just really awesome city dwellers. So these are just some little things that I've seen tourists do that kind of upset some of the locals here in Paris. If you want more, because I'm sure I forgot some on here, we actually have a how to upset people or how not to upset people when you come to France, which gives you a lot more in-depth some kind of stuff, but I try to make these more Paris focused here. Anyway, if you want to learn more about visiting Paris, we've got plenty of stuff, from budget tips to shocks to don'ts to how to get to the airport and train station on our website at woltersworld.com. We're also on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, Pinterest, all those fun things. And if you want to learn about the food here in France, go to our Wolters World Eats channel. We got all kinds of videos about the food here in France. Bye from Paris.